Hello everyone, I'm Morgan, and today I wanted to talk to you about some books that are both plot and character driven. I know I've talked about the fact many times that I really like character driven books, but the truth is I actually really like plots as well. It's just that I need the characters to be pretty developed to be able to enjoy some of the plots, and usually it's like you have to choose between plot and characters, and that kind of annoys me. So today I actually wanted to give you some recommendations of books that are both plot and character driven. So you don't have to choose with those. They're amazing in every respect if you ask me. So I'm first going to go through the books that I have physically, and then I will talk about some that I have on audiobook, which are amazing audiobooks, by the way. So I have 10 recommendations for you today. So the first one I have is Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. I actually listened to this one also on audiobook, plus I was reading the physical book, because there are some parts that are written in text and some other mixed media, which was nice to see in the physical format, but also like the audiobook is really good and I like both the characters. So if you don't know, like, this book is about a girl, Frances, who is about to go to university. She is in her last year of high school, and she has always thought that she wanted to go to university, but suddenly she starts to question it. And it's also about her being obsessed with this podcast, and she meets the guy who makes this podcast, who is called Aled, and is actually in her school, and they start a friendship. And their friendship is just so beautiful. Like, they really are there for each other. It was beautiful to see, and I love the discussion about whether you should really go to university, because we are in a society where we are always told that we should study and go to university and get diplomas, but really sometimes you just want to do something else, and that's also fine. And for that I really liked it. And as I said, so the characters are amazing, both Frances and Aled, but also the secondary characters, should I say, were all amazing. Just Alice Oseman is an amazing writer, and I have been going through her books slowly, and I've loved every single one of them so far. So yeah, just a great book. Then I have I Am the Messenger by Markus Zusak. I read this one at the end of last year and I was just blown away. I was really into this book. This is about a guy who is about 19 years old, I think, at the beginning of the book, and he finds a card at his house, so a play card like this, and there's a message on the card that says that he has to go to this address, and he goes there and he sees that there's a woman who is being abused by her husband, and so he decides to help her, and that's the beginning of his, I don't know, not his life, but like he becomes some sort of a vigilante, and he keeps getting these cards, these play cards that have messages on them and addresses, and he doesn't really know why he's been chosen, but he goes on with it, and it's just really exciting in a way, but also touching, because he has not had a lot in his life. He lives alone and drives a taxi, and his friends are really there for him. They're really great, but he feels like there's something missing in his life, and that's why he goes he keeps going like with this thing, because he finds some meaning in his life there. And yeah, just it was a lot of descriptions like of his character, but also so this plot that is really interesting and actually goes somewhere at some point. So it's just, yeah, it's a great book. And then I have a weird recommendation, but it's Glamorama by Bret, Easton, Ellis. I hated this book for like the first 100 pages, but it's actually the point, I think, because this main character is seriously unlikable, like the most unlikable of unlikable characters, and all of the other characters in the book are great, and that's the point. So we follow this 30-40 something guy who lives in New York, I think, or LA? Yeah, New York, Manhattan, in the 1990s, and he hangs out with many people that are pretty known, and he's always name dropping and brand dropping. So he's like the most annoying person you will ever see and ever read about. But the whole point is that he is annoying and he is a terrible person, and everyone knows that. And I guess what Bret Easton is meant to show is how crazy like this life is in New York, the people who work for brands, and I could really feel that. And I mean, at first obviously it wasn't like the best book because you're just hating everything. You're like, is this ever going to end? And yes, some weird things start happening like towards 70-80 page mark, and it keeps getting weirder and weirder. And so I was just like, what is happening? And eventually you do know why this is happening, but not until the end of the book, so I'm not going to spoil it for you. Like, there's a reason, so at least that's good, because if there wasn't one, that I would have been really pissed. And so I don't know, like these kinds of books not everyone enjoys, because like the end, it makes you feel like you went through a ride but for kind of no reason. But I think the ride is so fun and crazy that I was, I don't know, really amused in the end. So I'm quite happy I read this, but yeah, it's not for everyone. And there are some scenes that are also kind of crude, like there's a lot of talk about some murders also. There's some blood in some scenes that is pretty particular. I mean, he is also the author of American Psycho, so if you've read that book then you know what I'm talking about. This isn't as shocking as that one, but it's still pretty hard to read at times. Just a few scenes though, like most of the book is just about like kind of fame and those sort of things, and the character doesn't really improve. I mean, kind of, he's a little bit less annoying by the end, but he's still like a terrible person. So yeah. On a completely different note, I have Orphan by Christina Cline. This is a historical fiction book that is based on true events. It is about a girl who goes on a train at the beginning of the book with her brother, her little brother. She was just a girl at the beginning of the book, and she goes there because she doesn't have a mother anymore. I'm not sure if she didn't have a mother or just her mother put her on the train or whatever. It's been a long time since I read this, but basically she goes on this train and eventually she gets to this platform in another city, and she's just put there for people to come and see if they want to adopt a kid. And that's something that used to happen a lot in the US. You could just go to the train station and see kids that were happening that needed work or a family, and she was not actually chosen, but she was with another baby and that baby was chosen. And so she was real sad at first because she didn't have anywhere to go and she just had to keep going. So if you're not chosen in the first city, you just have to go back on the train and keep going, and so you get to another city and you can try again. But as she was already, I don't know, 14 or something like that, they looked for babies to adopt, but in the end I think she got in this family who wanted her to take care of their kids, and they were actually pretty abusive, so it wasn't really great. So there was also about that, but also I think there are two timelines. Like there is, so this timeline I was talking about, and there's also one in the present. And the one in the present is about this girl, so in 2 days time basically, who doesn't know who her mother is. Honestly, I'm not sure anymore anything about what I'm saying because it's been so long, but I remember there were two timelines, and I think there was something about adoption with this other girl as well, and she was questioning things, and she was sent to this old woman to help her with things around the house, and she gets close to her and she knows that some things have been happening. They start helping each other and they create a bond, and that's really cute to see. So both of the timelines were really interesting and different, but they did have some things in common. So just, yeah, both the characters and the plot in here were amazing, and to know that this is close to a true story gives it that bit of more emotion for me. So yeah. Then I have the Sal and Gabi series, which I've been raving about, which has Sal and Gabi break the universe and Sal and Gabi fix the universe. I have talked about this quite a bit lately, but this series is about Sal and Gabi, and at the beginning of the book, Sal is arriving in this new city and he doesn't really know anyone, and he meets Gabi in the school, and the whole thing about him is that he can go to some other universes. I mean, at first it's just that he can bring things from another universe and he doesn't really control it, so he's trying to know a little bit more about that. And his father works in physics and in something that has to do with what Sal can do, so he discovers that the more Sal brings back things from another universe, the more some particles stay in our universe, so it may be dangerous. So there's a whole plot about that. And also in the first book, so we have Gabi's brother who has just been born and needs help to breathe, so he doesn't have an immune system. He has a problem with that, so they try to help him. And so it's really a cute story. Like, there's a whole thing about both of their parents. They're amazing. So Sal's family is great, and Gabi's family too. They are from Cuba, and I really like the representation, just to know more about Cuban culture because I don't know anything about it. And just, yeah, how cute they were together, these families that go together really well. And it's a great book, a great series, and I cannot wait for more books to come out in it. Then I have The Bone Clocks by David Mitchell. This is really a weird book. Like, I guess it's kind of historical fiction, but it's also just literary fiction. It's a pretty chunky book, but I got through it pretty quickly. I read it as soon as it came out, like in 2013, something like that. And it's about main characters, and there's a bit of a fantasy element in it, and I don't know, really. I guess one of the characters I remember the most is a girl who was about 17 and didn't want to stay home anymore, so she ran away, and she was sitting next to a river and just looking at the water and being really alone. And I just like kind of really related to her back then, because I was also having a lot of issues with my family, and I still do sometimes. So, and I was around that age as well, so there's something to that. But just most of the characters in here are really just great. There are quite a few, and they have some length, but I don't want to spoil you about it because I think it's really interesting to discover this weird thing that they have. And also, like in all of David Mitchell's books, that are some characters that we have seen in previous books, because they kind of all tie together, and it's more kind of an Easter egg situation with, like, you can understand the books if you haven't read any of the other ones, but this one really ties everything together and explains to you why we see them everywhere, because there is a fantasy element, and that's just amazing. And I love this one so much, and I really want to reread it after I read all of the other books. In by David Mitchell because I think this would give me even more background, but even without that, this book is just amazing and I still have not forgotten it, and I really want to reread it actually because I don't remember it enough, and that's kind of good because I like going back and just discovering everything again, so I think I will definitely do that. Then I have the Bone Season series, which I absolutely adore. So there are already 3 books in the series, but I only own the first 2. So we have the Bone Season and the Mime Order, and the third one is called... God, I don't remember. But I did read all 3 of them, and this series is just one of my favorites. I raved about it a lot last year, but to tell you more about it this time, so the Bone Season follows Paige, who is a young woman, so she's about 20, 21 I think, and she is originally from, oh actually I think she's 19, whatever. So she is originally from Ireland, and she is part of the Voyants in this world, so these people who have some kind of power, and there are different orders of Voyants, and she is part of the highest orders of Voyants, which means that her gift is pretty rare and also really strong. She can actually get into people's minds, sort of. She is what they call a dreamwalker, and so yeah, she sort of gets into people's dreams, but not really, and there are many people who have these powers, and they are all looked for by this society, Scion, which is basically a dystopian society, so they don't want other people, don't want people with powers anymore, and more cities in the world have Scion come to their city and take over. So we follow mostly Scion London, but we do see some other cities in the next books, and the first book actually takes place in some sort of camp that Paige is sent to after she's caught by the police, and some part of the police is actually clairvoyant because they have this team that they use to catch other Voyants who have powers, because obviously it's sometimes easier to have powers to catch those people, because otherwise how are you going to fight people with powers if you don't have any? But it's a crazy story. I love these books so much. So the first one is kind of hard to get into at first because there's a lot of world building that could have been better done, but after that, like by the end, you really get everything. The second one is more like a murder mystery, and it's really great. Like they go to many different places, and the third one is also really different and amazing as well. All of the characters in here I love. There are some LGBTQ plus characters. So we have Nick, who is gay, we have Warden, who is kind of bisexual, sort of. Just we have many different representations, and I loved every single one of these characters. I really remember them. I think about this series so much. I also have met Samantha and Shannon, so she did sign my books. Actually, I think I only got the first one signed. Yes, in here. So yeah, if you want to go to Scion, just read these books. And so the fourth book in this series is going to come out in the beginning of 2021, so I just cannot wait. But yeah, these were all the books I had physically. Now I still had a few that I own as audiobooks. So the first one is Skyward and also Starsight, both part of the Skyward series by Bret and Sanderson. These are some of the most amazing audiobooks I've ever listened to. They are just so good. I listened to the first one so about a year ago. It's about this girl She's about 19 at the beginning of the book, Spencer, and she has always wanted to become a pilot just like her father, but her father is said to have been a traitor. There was this huge battle a few years ago, well, quite a few years ago, before she was born, I think, where he was fighting the crows, so these sort of aliens that they fight, and he actually turned on his camp, so obviously they didn't like it, and after that, so he was killed because of that, and she has grown up in his shadow, and she's always wanted to become a pilot like him, and she's never wanted to believe that he was a coward because she knew her father and he wasn't there. So yeah, this happened when she was already born. I'm already remembering because it's been some time since I read it, but yeah, it was just so exciting because so at first she couldn't get into flight school. Many people don't want her to get into it, but very soon in the beginning of the book she gets into the school, but it's not the end of it, so many people still put different things ahead of her. She has a lot to get through, but she manages, and there's a lot about fighting and flying with some not spaceships, but just airplanes, and it's so exciting, like the fighting battles. Wow, like when you're listening to that, you can't stop. It's amazing, like you want to keep going, and they're amazing audiobooks, seriously. And the second one is also great, but it's not the same as the first book, which is good because some series just do more of the same thing, and it's not that I don't like that, but it's nice to see something different and see again those characters that we really like. So that's what happened in this book. She also makes some friends. She has a best friend that she's had for some time at the beginning of the book, and he at first wants also to become a pilot like her. They've both wanted to become pilots for ages, and at the end he decides that he wants to become more of an engineer, but they still work together a lot, and it's really nice to see. They have a great friendship, and there's this guy that she has a bit of a feud with. They really don't get on. There's so many characters and all the dynamics I really like, and there's just almost nothing I don't like about this book. Just maybe like there seems to be some sort of a romance in the beginning of the first book, not really the beginning, just in the first book, and I thought it was kind of weird, like it was kind of put there, like in every YA, sci-fi or fantasy you see a romance but you don't really understand it because they didn't seem to have much chemistry for me, but it does make more sense in the second book, so fair enough. And the last book or series that I wanted to mention is An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green, and A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor, which just came out. So this duology, which they now call the Cars duology, is really cool. It's also a great, they're both great audiobooks as well, so I love this duology. Both of the books were amazing. So in this one, I think you probably have heard about it because it's really popular, but in the first book we follow a girl again, who is about 19, I think, something like that, and she sees this huge statue that she thinks is an art installation, but it's not really. But the thing is, she calls her friend in the middle of the night when she sees this, and he comes and they film it and they put it on YouTube, and when they wake up the next day their video has blown up because these statues have appeared all throughout the world and no one knows what they are, so it becomes a huge thing, and it's so about her getting all of this fame and how she uses it and lives through it, I guess, because she's not used to it, you know, and she doesn't always make the best choices, which is understandable. She's pretty young, like, it's fine. But so we see her struggling with that and how her friends are affected as well. So she has a girlfriend, Maya, who is amazing, and she also has her best friend Andy, who took this video, and she also meets another girl who helps her with her research, and it's a lot, but I really like this. Yeah, the audiobook is really good, and just the story, like, I was really into it to know, like, what is this, and to see how she was changing with time, making both good and bad choices. And the second book talked a lot about technology and kept going, like, it's not about fame anymore or social media, but it's more about, yeah, technology, what we should do, and just the future. And that was really interesting, and yeah, it's just really cool books, all of these. So yeah, that's all I had to say. So yeah, just read those books. They're amazing in every respect, if you ask me. And yeah, that's all. Thank you for watching. Please tell me if you have read any of these books and what you thought of them, as I would love to know. But that's all for today. Thank you again, and goodbye.
Dream I know, deep up my feelings feel.